Now, if there were 3 words to describe my first experience with the S23 Ultra, I personally would say that it's smooth, fast, and damn near perfect. Now, the Galaxy S23 Ultra is a phone that hasn't changed much from last year. It still has the same display, it still has the same look, and it still gives you the same experience. And this is a good thing because in order to make a damn near perfect phone, you have to keep all of the things that made your previous phone great while fixing the minor things that needed improvement. And that's why I cannot say that this phone is perfect. But when you compare it to every other phone in the market, I will say that the S23 Ultra is the closest thing to perfection. And so far, the S23 Ultra has an amazing display that's holding up very well. Scrolling through this phone is incredibly smooth with no lags whatsoever. The build quality and feel of the S23 Ultra is top tier, and the camera quality has improved a lot while still giving that premium Samsung feel. And again, there were some major problems that I had with my S23 Ultra that prevented me from calling it perfect right out of the gate, but I still wanted to share my first impressions and give you guys some real insight on how the S23 Ultra is in real life. Now, when it comes down to pricing of the S23 Ultra, the 256GB version starts at $1,200. The 1TB version is $1,600, and at the time of me making this video, Samsung is doing a special deal where the 512GB version also costs $1,200, which is a really good price. But if you do miss out on this deal, it costs around $1,400. And the last thing regarding storage is that the 256GB version also has 8GB of RAM, and the 512 and 1TB versions have 12. Now, looking at colors, the S23 Ultra has 2 different sets of colors, and this basically means that you have the primary colors like green, lavender, cream, and phantom black that are more common colors that are available in stores like Best Buy and all of the other major phone companies. And then you have the special Samsung colors starting from graphite, red, and lime, which are colors that you can only get on the Samsung website, so they're basically special edition. And the version that I went with is phantom black, and as you can see right here, it has a very stealthy look. The black is very rich, which complements the matte feel, and you have the pitch black Samsung logo that's shiny, so it adds depth. You can also see gray rings around the cameras, which makes it look even more uniform. And looking at the sides, they have a stainless steel finish with a dark undertone, but in different lighting it can look more gray. And going over different buttons and ports, on the right side you have the volume rockers and power button along with a 5G antenna. On the top there's a mic, and on the bottom we have our speaker, USB-C port, along with a few extra mics, a SIM ejection tray, and last but not least, we have the port that holds your S Pen. And to get the S Pen out of the S23 Ultra, all you have to do is press in and pull out. And looking at more of the S Pen, whatever color you get is the color that your S Pen will be. My pen matches with my phantom black S23 Ultra, and based on my first impressions, I will say that just like last year, it's very slim. You have the command button that lets you do a multitude of things, and it has the clickable tip that resembles an ordinary pen, so I'll give it an A+ for attention to detail. And now when it comes to the build quality, based on my first impressions, I would say that this is the most durable yet premium feeling phone in the market. It's pretty heavy to hold in hand. I decided to test out its weight compared to my Pixel 7 Pro, and it was still a little heavier, but after a day and a half of using it, I pretty much got used to holding it. Now, the front and back of the S23 Ultra is Gorilla Glass Victus 2, which is an upgrade from last year's Victus 1 on the S22 Ultra. And yes, like I tell everyone, the S23 Ultra will survive a few drops, but how many drops depends on the surface. So if you drop it on a regular wood floor in a house, you pretty much can drop it a lot before you see any damage. But if you do drop it on concrete, then you can notice a crack on the 3rd or maybe even 4th drop. So I will say that if you're someone who drops your phone a lot, you're much better off getting the case. The S23 Ultra is also IP68 dust and water resistant, so if you drop your phone in water or you're surrounded by sand, then you won't have a thing to worry about. Also, one more thing that I wanted to say is that it's also good to get a screen protector because a lot of phones today aren't as scratch resistant as they used to be. I've had many phones that have scratches that don't go away, and I was mad, so I want to give y'all a heads up. Now, something that has changed from last year is the overall frame. The S23 Ultra is a little bit more boxier than the S22 Ultra. For me, it makes it much easier to hold in hand, and the curved screen is very minimal, which makes it much easier to avoid accidental touches. Now, on a side note, one thing that does annoy me about the S23 Ultra is the apparent rattling. And yeah, I don't know if you guys can hear it, but long story short, I spent $1,300 on this phone, so All nitpicks welcome. Now the S23 Ultra has a 6.8-inch dynamic AMOLED display that has a refresh rate of 120Hz along with 1700 nits worth of peak brightness, and based on my first impressions with the display, I would say that it looks, feels, and performs amazing as expected. And one of the things that I noticed during my few days of using the S23 Ultra is that it feels incredibly smooth whenever I'm scrolling on social media or I'm just scrolling through the general OS setting up my home screen and settings. I really liked how quick and snappy everything was. And right here, I'm going to do a side-by-side comparison with the Pixel 7 Pro to give you guys an idea of what I mean. With the Pixel, you can see the animations move, but with the S23 Ultra, it was insanely fast and precise. Both are great, but again, I want to show you guys how fast the S23 Ultra is. Now the 120Hz refresh rate made scrolling feel really smooth. Another thing that I noticed was that while scrolling through apps, there was no hiccups whatsoever. You can also lower the refresh rate down to 60Hz for a less smoother scrolling, and doing this will result in extra battery life, and it still looks pretty good. The bezels are damn near non-existent. Right here, you can see that they're wrapped nicely around the screen and hug the curved edge tightly. The hole punch camera is also very small, and I pretty much forgot it existed once I started using the phone. And now when it comes to brightness, the S23 Ultra is at 1750 nits max, which means that it's one of the brightest screens out of every other smartphone. I went outside to test it out and I was able to see everything very clearly. Also, if you find yourself in a situation where the sun is beaming on you, you have the option to put extra brightness, but this does use more battery. The fingerprint scanner was really fast. I used it for passwords, Samsung Pay, and to unlock my phone, and overall I don't remember a time where it would lag or couldn't read my fingerprint, so I was pretty satisfied. The facial recognition wasn't as good as the fingerprint scanner. There were a couple of times where it would take longer to scan my face. Also, there was one time where it couldn't recognize my face at all, but overall I would still say that it was pretty good. Now the resolution and viewing experience of the S23 Ultra's display was easily one of my favorite things about this phone. Something that I want to tell you guys to make your display even better is to go to settings, scroll down to display, go to screen resolution, and choose WQHD if you want to get the ultimate viewing experience. And once I did that, watching videos, scrolling through many different apps, and even playing games made it that much better. And I want to give you guys an idea of what the screen looks like while watching a video and playing a game.
Here is Harden. Already 2 assists in the corner, has that 3 as well. Oh, crosses over Mobley and floats it in. Embiid got tripped up. They'll count the basket, plus the foul.
Now I know that it's early, but one thing that I really do want to touch on is the battery life. Now the Galaxy S23 Ultra has a 5000 mAh battery that on the spec sheet looks just like the S22 Ultra, and I got this phone on Monday night, which means that Wednesday was my first full day with it. Now on Wednesday, I didn't really use my phone until about 11 AM. I was using my S23 Ultra all day, and I basically did nothing to save the battery. I had the brightness all the way up. I used 5G, I had Quad HD on with 120Hz, and I checked my battery around 9 PM and I was on 24%, and I checked to see if my screen time was good and it was a little over 8 hours. So based on my first impression, the battery is looking good. And now of course it's too early to tell, but based on my first impressions with the battery life, it's really good so far, but I do need more time before I gather my final thoughts. Now just like the S22 Ultra, the S23 Ultra has some really loud speakers that not only had great volume, but also great quality. See, a lot of phones' qualities take a hit once you turn the volume all the way up, but the S23 Ultra was able to keep that same consistent sound. I also tested out how they sounded when playing music, and again the consistency was there. I liked the bass, the vocals were very clear, and I honestly had no complaints. I also tested out the S23 Ultra as my alarm this morning, and I had no problem waking up from it. I woke up on the first alarm and was really impressed with how loud it got, even though the ringtones aren't that good. And right here, I'm going to give you guys an idea of how the speakers sound.
I will say that mid-range game, that stop and pop. Oh, Kobe Bryant floats it. Bryant pushes aside Benny Adams, the official, to get free, drives inside and finishes. Dribble himself right into a boatload of traffic. Williams, cross-court, Bryant, fake ones, up it goes, and down it goes through.
Now the Galaxy S23 Ultra has a 200 megapixel main camera, along with a 12 megapixel ultra wide and selfie camera, and a 10 megapixel telephoto. And based on my sample pics, I would say that the outer cameras are amazing, but the selfies are hit or miss. And looking at regular pictures, the S23 Ultra arguably has the best camera in the market. I took a ton of photos in the past 2 days, whether it was in or out the gym, supermarket, Chipotle, and many other places. And one thing that I really loved about the S23 Ultra's camera was that every photo has that really sharp look to it. I also like the vibrancy whenever I took a picture outside. Right here, I took a picture of my gym, and I was amazed by how much more colorful everything looked, and it made me even more eager to take pictures of random things. Even the night shots were impressive as well. The added lighting gave the pictures a really nice touch of realism, while also giving a much needed boost to the dull environment, and again, the sharpness was at its peak. And now my biggest problem with the camera was the selfies. I don't know what it is, but for years, Samsung is unable to capture my skin tone right. My skin on the S23 Ultra is much lighter, and I get a ghost type of look, which makes me prefer other phones when taking selfies. And this isn't just a problem with the S23 Ultra, it's really a problem with Samsung phones in general. Now when it comes to video camera, the S23 Ultra can shoot at 720p all the way up to 8K, and when it comes to frame rate, it shoots at 24, 30, and 60. And also, unlike last year, the S23 Ultra can shoot at 8K at 30 frames per second, compared to the S22 Ultra's 8K at 24 frames per second. And even though that's great, I still want to use the phone a little bit more before I get my final thoughts on videos. So what I am going to do is show you guys some video tests that I took in different environments. Now, based on my first impressions with the S23 Ultra, I would say that so far, it's the most well-polished phone that you can get in the market. And I say this because Samsung took what made the S22 Ultra great, fixed the things that didn't make it great, and gave us the ultimate powerhouse, which is the S23 Ultra. And I hope you guys enjoyed the video. I have 2 more videos on the S23 Ultra, which is my 1 week later and my day in the life. So stay tuned. And also don't forget to subscribe and turn on post notices. And I'm gonna see you guys in the next one. Peace.